The phone rang as I was wrapping a tiny silver bracelet for my niece. I tucked the receiver under my ear, my hand still busy with ribbon. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was tight. "Lauren, maybe you should sit this Christmas out." The scissors slipped in my hand. I stared at the half-wrapped presents scattered on my rug. "What are you talking about?" She sighed, a soft, disappointed sound I knew too well. "It's just, you tend to bring the mood down. We all feel it. It's for everyone's comfort." I could hear my father's low murmur in the background, not arguing, just existing. My vision blurred. "Bring the mood down?" I whispered. The line was silent. I looked down at the gift in my lap, the tag clearly written, "To Mom." The sting of my mother's words was still fresh the next morning when the group text lit up my phone. It was from my younger sister, Amber. Asterisk, "Can't wait to see everyone on the 24th. The menu is going to be incredible. Christmas tree asterisk." My heart sank. I scrolled up. I wasn't included in the thread. This was a new group, one made specifically for the Christmas I wasn't invited to. A separate text from Amber popped up. Asterisk, "So sorry, Lauren. Mom said she talked to you. Maybe we can do coffee in the new year." Asterisk, later, out of morbid curiosity, I opened Facebook. Amber had already posted, asterisk, "Finally, planning a drama-free Christmas. So blessed." Sparkles asterisk. I closed the app, my hands trembling. That evening, I sat alone in my quiet apartment. The silence felt heavier than usual. I remembered last Christmas, my first one after the divorce. I tried so hard to put on a brave face, but my family's stares were full of pity. My mother had pulled me aside. "We just want happy stories this year, Lauren," she'd said, patting my hand. My divorce wasn't a story, it was my life. I was always the emotional one, the one who felt things too deeply. Now, that sensitivity was a crime. I picked up my phone and started typing a text to my mom. "I'm sorry if I've been," I stopped. I deleted the words. "No," I whispered into the quiet room. "Not this time." At work the next day, my coworker Marcy announced the office potluck. "You're coming, right, Lauren?" she asked, her eyes kind. I forced a bright smile, the one I'd been practicing. "Wouldn't miss it." I spent the lunch hour nodding and laughing at all the right times, my cheeks aching from the effort. As I was washing my plate, Marcy leaned against the sink next to me. "You gonna be okay for the holidays?" she asked softly. The genuine concern in her voice almost broke my careful composure. I shrugged, keeping my smile firmly in place. "I'll be fine." "Really?" But that night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. A hard, determined knot was forming deep inside me. A few days later, Amber's annual family newsletter arrived in my email. It was a glossy, professional PDF filled with pictures of her perfect family. Her husband's promotion. Her kids' stellar grades. My parents' luxurious cruise. Every single family member had a glowing paragraph celebrating their achievements. I scrolled to the end, my heart pounding. There was nothing about me. The closing line read, "We're so grateful everyone's thriving." I clicked on the comments below the post. Dozens of people had written, asterisk, "What a beautiful family." Asterisk and asterisk, "You're all so blessed." Asterisk, I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. I had been erased. A week before Christmas, my dad called. "Hi, kiddo," he said, his voice awkward. "Just checking in." I didn't say anything. He cleared his throat. "You know how your mother gets about the holidays. She wants everything to be perfect. Maybe next year, okay?" That phrase, "next year," was the final straw. It was a hollow promise they'd been making for years. The silence stretched between us, heavy with his guilt and my disappointment. I couldn't listen to another excuse. "I have to go, Dad," I said, ending the call mid-sentence. I stood there, shaking. Then, I walked to my desk, pulled out a fresh notepad, and wrote at the top, "Christmas gift idea." I wasn't going to cry or beg. I was going to give them a gift they would never, ever forget. It couldn't be petty or cruel. It had to be something that would truly mean something. An idea began to form, a memory of my grandmother's warm smile. I started making calls, digging through old boxes in my storage closet. I found the files from her estate, things I hadn't looked at in years. My mother had handled everything back then, telling me it was too complicated. I shuffled through papers, my fingers brushing against a thick, aged manila folder. On its tab, in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, were the words, "Maple Street House, Title Dispute." My breath caught. I'd almost forgotten. When Grandma Eleanor passed away 8 years ago, she left me her old house on Maple Street. At the will reading, my mother had been furious. "That's too much responsibility for Lauren," she'd insisted. She convinced me to let her handle it, saying the house was a money pit and the title was messy. I was young and grieving, so I agreed. She'd never spoken of it again. Now, I opened the folder. Inside, I found the original will, clearly stating the house was mine. Behind it were recent property value assessments. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. The house had tripled in value. I needed to be sure. I made an appointment with a lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Wells. I handed her the will and the old deed. She clicked away on her computer, her glasses perched on her nose. After a long silence, she looked up. "It's very clear, Ms. Evans. This house is legally yours. The title was never transferred, but the will is ironclad. They can't touch it." A slow smile spread across my face, the first real, genuine smile in months. A calm certainty settled over me. I thanked the lawyer and walked out into the cold air, a new plan crystallizing in my mind. "Then that's my gift," I whispered to myself. I drove to Maple Street. The old house looked sad, with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn, but its structure was sound. I could see past the neglect. I could see Christmas. I hired a local restoration team, paying them a bonus for discretion and speed. We worked together, restoring the original hardwood floors, repainting the walls a warm cream, and fixing the stone fireplace. I found Grandma's old recipes and stocked the kitchen. I told the foreman I need it finished, completely, by the morning of December 24th. He nodded, understanding the importance of the deadline. Meanwhile, Amber's social media was a whirlwind of her perfect Christmas preparations. Posts of matching plaid pajamas, a caterer's elaborate menu, and a hired photographer filled her feed. The whole family commented with heart emojis and praise. Asterisk, "You're the best hostess, Amber." Asterisk, my aunt had written. Amber was being celebrated for taking over the family tradition in her modern mansion, a tradition that had started in the very house I was restoring. I went to a small jewelry store and bought a simple, elegant gold box. At home, I polished the old, ornate key to Grandma's house until it shone. On December 22nd, a uniformed courier delivered beautifully wrapped, identical gold boxes to my parents, Amber, and a few key aunts and uncles. Each tag was simple and elegant, asterisk from Lauren. "Merry Christmas." Asterisk, my mother later told me she'd rolled her eyes when she saw it. Well, she'd said to my dad, at least she sent something. Probably a sad little ornament. She untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on soft velvet, wasn't an ornament. It was a single, antique house key. Beneath it lay a folded piece of parchment paper. The letter inside was written in my best penmanship. It read, asterisk, "You always said Grandma's house was lost to us." It wasn't lost. It was waiting. Waiting for someone who remembers what family used to mean. If you remember, too, join me. Christmas Eve, 6 p.m. Bring the people you love most. Asterisk, my parents argued about it for an hour. It's a stunt, my mother said. But my father was curious. Amber, when she called them, just laughed. It's probably another one of her sad speeches, she scoffed. But we should go, just to see what she's done. On Christmas Eve, the house on Maple Street glowed. White fairy lights twinkled in the windows, and a fresh wreath hung on the red door. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of pine and roasting turkey. Soft jazz music played from an old record player I'd found in the attic. The fireplace crackled, casting a golden light across the perfectly restored living room. I stood by the mantel, wearing a simple, elegant red dress. I felt calm and powerful. At exactly 6 o'clock, headlights flashed across the front window. One car, then another, pulled up to the curb. I opened the door before they could knock. My mother stood there, her mouth slightly open. My father was behind her, his eyes wide as he took in the transformed house. Amber and her family huddled on the path, looking confused. You did all this?" my mother finally whispered, stepping inside. I simply nodded. My father walked past me, running his hand over the polished banister, a look of deep nostalgia on his face. Amber stepped in, her arms crossed. "What's the point of this, Lauren?" she asked, her voice sharp. I met her gaze, my expression serene. "To finish what Grandma started." We sat down at the long dining table, which was set with Grandma's old china. The atmosphere was thick with tension and unasked questions. During a lull in the strained small talk, I wiped my mouth and placed my napkin on the table. "There's something I want to share with everyone," I began. I explained how Grandma had left the house to me. My mother's face went pale. "She knew I would understand its value," I said softly. "Not its price, but its heart. You told me it was a burden, Mom. You hid the truth from me." The table went completely silent. Amber slammed her fork down. "You're lying. Mom would never do that." I didn't flinch. I reached for the folder I'd left on the sideboard and laid the documents on the table. The notarized will. The deed. The lawyer's letter confirming it was all legal. My father picked up the will, his hands shaking as he read it. His shoulders slumped. Amber's husband, Tom, whistled softly. "You really kept this a secret all these years?" he asked, looking at my mother. I answered for her. "No. They kept it from me. I just took it back." Chaos erupted. Amber pushed her chair back so hard it screeched. "You ruined everything. You just had to ruin Christmas," she cried, tears streaking her makeup. She stormed out of the room. My mother jumped up, pointing a finger at me. "You couldn't just let us have a nice holiday. You could have told us privately." I looked at her, my heart finally calm. "I did try to tell you," I replied, my voice steady. "For years, in 100 different ways. You just didn't listen." My mother ran after Amber, shouting her name. My father remained seated, staring at the wood grain of the table, his face a mask of shame. The front door slammed shut, leaving a ringing silence in the dining room. My father didn't move. After a long moment, he spoke without looking at me. "I knew," he whispered, his voice rough. "I knew about the will. I knew it wasn't right. But your mother." I didn't want more conflict. It was easier to just let it go. I listened, letting him sit in the weight of his confession. When he finished, I said, "That's exactly why I stopped coming around, Dad. Because it's always easier for you to just let things go. Even me." He finally looked up, his eyes glistening. "I'm so sorry, Lauren." Just then, a gentle knock came from the front door. I excused myself and answered it. Marcy from work stood there, holding a pie, her teenage son beside her looking shy. "We brought dessert," she said with a warm smile. I ushered them in. My father looked up, confused. "Everyone," I announced, "this is my friend Marcy and her son, Leo. I invited them to join us." I turned to my dad. "I thought Grandma would want this house filled with people who know what gratitude feels like." My parents exchanged a glance, their humiliation complete, but they said nothing. ####21. After pie was served, I stood and raised my glass. A toast, I said. Everyone looked at me. To Grandma Eleanor, who believed in leaving a legacy of love, not just property. To learning that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing your own peace. And to learning that silence isn't love. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is speak your truth. Marcy and Leo raised their glasses. My father, after a hesitation, did too. My mother stared at her plate. She finally looked up, her eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us now? She muttered. I placed my glass down. No, Mom. I just finally know my worth. I walked to the mantel and picked up a final, long envelope. I handed it to her. She opened it with trembling hands. It was a copy of the new property deed, along with a letter from me. It stated that the house was mine, legally and permanently, and that I would never, ever sell it. She read it, her face ashen. You're serious? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I just looked at her, my resolve as solid as the foundations of the house around us. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke up in my grandmother's house, filled with a profound peace. The story, of course, began to trickle through our small town. People drove by slowly, pointing at the revived house with its cheerful lights still glowing. Mrs. Gable from next door came over with a coffee cake. Your grandmother would be so proud, she said, squeezing my hand. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from my father. Asterisk, can I come by? Just to talk? No one else. Asterisk, I looked around the quiet, sunlit living room. He came over an hour later, holding a small, worn cardboard box. We sat in the kitchen with coffee. I was wrong, he said, not meeting my eyes at first. I failed you. I was so busy keeping the peace with your mother that I lost my daughter. We talked for almost 2 hours, honestly, for the first time in years. He told me stories about Grandma I'd never heard. When he left, he hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, he whispered. After he was gone, I opened the box he'd left. It was filled with old photos. One showed me and Grandma, covered in flour, baking cookies at this very kitchen counter. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, asterisk for my Lauren Bear, the one who never gives up. Asterisk. Months later, my family never forgot that Christmas. Amber's perfect social media image cracked, and she posted less about her flawless life. My mother and I were civil but distant, some wounds needed time. The real change was in me. I turned Grandma's house into a community haven, hosting holiday dinners for people who had nowhere else to go. The house was always filled with laughter and real conversation. That Christmas, they told me I brought the mood down. Maybe I did. I brought it back down to real. And in doing so, I gave my family the one gift they would always remember.